Let me also now invite back Nick to join me on the stage for this panel as well. And can I also please invite Rong Dong to please come and join us as well, 请上. And let me also introduce the other speakers who are going to be on this panel. Please, Nick. Steve Tappan, he is the CEO of Xingfu and the author of The Secrets of CEOs, and he has advised a number of top CEOs over the past 20 years. And Steve is going to be here momentarily. He actually ducked out to do an interview for the BBC. But let me welcome Vinay Gupta. He did the MBA in 2007. He co-founded Whipcar.com in 2009, a first service in the world that enables car owners to rent out their vehicles whenever they're not in use. And then finally, the last speaker on this panel is Li Ning. He's the co-founder and CEO of Made.com, an online furniture store established in 2010. And he also has lots of experience in the online internet startup phase. Now, how this panel is going to work is very straightforward. What we're going to do is to have a bit of a discussion around what the secrets of innovation for both Chinese and European companies are, and then there'll be an opportunity to open it up to the floor for questions from the audience. So I'm just going to make my move over here. And actually, what I'm going to try and do is to open it up first, and just to hear some thoughts from Vinay, if I might. We've heard a bit about the secrets of innovation, and you're somebody who's actually done it as an entrepreneur. So give us your thoughts as to what some of the key ingredients might be for European and thus in other companies.
Sure. Thank you very much for inviting me here. It's really a pleasure to be here.
It's always nice to have a former student.
Thank you. Well, I'm really excited also just to participate in the conversation, to see the implications of this kind of innovation in emerging markets like China. It's relevant to why we started our business, which is, one, taking a look at attitudinal shifts and where people are headed. That's obviously the market that you want to address. Then also industry factors that also need to be addressed. And specifically for our business, our business allows people that have cars that don't use them very often to make the most of those cars. They can rent those cars out to people in their neighborhood. So if you don't have a car, you don't need to bother with the hassle of owning a car, but you can still use one. And if you do have a car, that car can now pay for itself versus just depreciating year over year. So what led us to develop this kind of idea is we looked at people's behavior, and they are increasingly, people in the West especially, are valuing experiential things and services more so than owning things. So there's been a 30% reduction in UK first-time car buyers under the age of 29. In the US, for example, in 1988, 44% of 16-year-olds got their driving license. In 2008, 20 years later, that 44% went down to 30%. So people, again, that freedom of driving has been replaced by things like mobile phones and social networking. And that's the behavioral side. I won't go into that anymore. On the industry side, car manufacturers have to find additional ways to add value to their customers. And in the West, 50% of new car purchases are people switching brands, because there's not that continuity of experience with the customers that they're trying to address. So these are some of the factors that brought us to develop this business to address the excess capacity of cars. The average usage of a car in this country is 4.5 hours per week. So again, that's what brought us here, and I think there's certainly implications for China, even though the per capita ownership of cars is currently less than 10% in China, whereas in the West it's about 50%. There's still, I think, a lot of learnings and possibly an opportunity for China to leapfrog some of the mistakes that have been made in the West.
Great. I think that's a really good point, actually, to bring in Li Ning. You've done your startup business. You've had experience in France. So give us your view as to whether or not the environment could be quite different in China for your business, which is fascinating. It seems like it's the online version of IKEA, but I don't want to, I don't want to characterize it.
Maybe just a few quick points about Made.com. So Made.com is a e-commerce company that allows you to buy designer furniture direct from the manufacturers. So
I'm so sorry, not like IKEA.
Not like IKEA, much better than IKEA, I hope, certainly hope so. I guess the reason I'm here is that it's a startup business like Vinay yourself. So innovation is a matter of survival for us. We don't have the same R&D budget, resource, or any kind of process that big companies that, we're fighting against IKEA, for example. We have maybe $1 million of the R&D budget, yet we have to do the same work to convince the same consumer to come to us. So we innovate from the product front. For example, from the design point of view, we actually crowdsource designs from all over the world on internet. We invite every designer to submit the designs to May.com, and then we invite consumers to vote for them. So the best designs wins and go to manufacturing. So in that way, we reduce huge amount of product development risk for no cost, because everything online, put a picture online, get votes, everything's free. And we also innovate on the process point of view. So as Johnson, you pointed out, the process is part of the innovation that's very, very key. So on that front, we try to keep the cost as low as possible by cutting out all the agency, so the middleman between you as a consumer and the factory. So in the segment where we are, lifestyle or furniture, one item typically comes out of the factory, so from the source at 1, and ends up at the market between 7 to 10. Normal, that's normal retail environment, because one item will go through a few middlemen, importers, brands, distributors, and then shops. Everyone actually marks up something, and at the end you get a 10 times markup. What we do actually from process point of view is we unite the consumers together online, and we group the orders. So, for example, when we have 3,000 orders for one chair that I'm sitting on, then we pass them to the factory that starts manufacturing for exactly the exact amount of 3,000 chairs. So there's no wastage and no inventory cost. And we pass all the savings to consumers. I guess that's the kind of, our view of innovation. So to come back to your question now, what are the ingredients for innovation for us? I think that's one, it's really the matter of the CEO championing innovation, because it's a matter of survival. If we don't innovate fast enough, then we die. We don't have the same budget of IKEA, therefore we have to do things much quicker. The traditional retail company would typically launch 2 collections of products per year, spring and maybe autumn, or someone else would do summer and winter. What we do is actually we launch 2 collections per week. We have the Monday collection and Thursday collection. So it's much smaller collection, however, the speed of renewal is much faster. So by trying much harder and much quicker, actually, we think we actually enable ourselves to find better chance of identifying survival, bestsellers. So the bestseller and survival is actually the key word for us. But I guess that's the way as a startup with limited resource, how we fight bigger players to try to outspeed them for innovations. And I guess my company is quite an interesting example of combining the West and the East, because I'm a Chinese myself, of birth and educated in Europe. So my company has natural mix of Chinese staff, most of them dedicated to product development, but also sourcing and quality control and shipping. And then the European staff, which is naturally more design-focused, design and R&D led. And I think one of the key points why we can do things much quicker than our competitors is actually the culture itself of the company is very much about launching new products, and that vision drives the 2 teams working really closely together. So the culture is a key factor for why we can launch 2 collections per week, whereas other companies launch 2 collections per year. And my other take actually about innovation is also about, I guess it's not a matter of resource and necessarily the money that you put into the business. It's about the attitude, as you say, agility and the culture. It's the attitude. We really encourage our staff to do things very differently. Differently how? I don't know, but just don't do it the same way as traditional retailers do. So just, I think by the mere fact of saying again and again and again to our staff, just do it differently. Ultimately, a lot of ridiculous things comes out of the process, but something good actually at the end will meet the consumer needs. So, sorry, speaking too much.
Great. No, thank you very much. 荣董，我想问你一下，你听到他们说这
Jerome, I'd like to ask you a question. Now, you hear them mentioning, companies like this. Do you think in China they're going to have a future, i.e., lots of very young people, they start this kind of company? Do you think they have a future in China? Because lots of people worry that in China there is no such potential for this. Now, my idea, I think that in China there's lots of young people, they have lots of ideas. However, in China, they often think that, not sure whether they can actually develop in China, because in China we think about risk probably far too much. However, in Tsinghua University, in China, in Tsinghua University is actually the starting point where young people actually develop their new ideas. So therefore, lots of young people, especially graduate from Tsinghua University, they have lots of new ideas. We would have a kind of nanny team to help them to register their company, to help them legal issues, and to help them finance. So that we would be able to help them to sort out some essential issues for their survival. And some of these young people can't even afford their rent. So we pay for their rent. We say to them, you give us 3% of your profit. So therefore, if your company fail, then I forego the rent. But if your company succeed, then I'm going to get 3% of your share. So there are about 280 companies in this kind of status at the moment. Quite a few of them are fairly successful. 3 out of these 280 have been listed in China. Some of these companies, for example, one company, they registered their company for 200,000 RMB, and I got 3% of them. At the moment, they're listed. All their founders. Now, all their founders, if you look at their founders, they actually over 0.1 billion, renminbi per person. So although I lost out on my rent, but I gained 3% of that company. All I need is 1 or 2 company in that kind of situation, then my risk was worth it. This is why the Tsinghua University has created this kind of opportunity for Tsinghua graduates and non-Tsinghua graduates. Facts, in reality, has proved that these young people actually have some fantastic ideas. One young person say, how come in an airplane there is a black box? This black box would record everything. How come there is no such black box on a vessel, for example? Apart from this idea, he had nothing else. So I said, okay, I'm going to realize your dream for you. I got lots of teachers for him, and I got lots of people to help him to develop a black box for vessels. And this person now has become the only supplier of black box for vessels. So such opportunities do exist. And I really hope in the UK, if there are such young people, you can come to Tsinghua University. We would help you too. I'll pay for your rent. Li Ning, I take it you don't have a problem with rent at the moment.
Really great examples of innovation, and I rudely had to cut you off, I'm afraid. But I would like to get your take, because one of the key things you hear so much about is the ability of Chinese companies to reverse innovate. You mentioned Golden Apple there. Just give us your take on this phenomenon, and really, in a business sense, is this positive? Is this good for China? Is it good for Western businesses? So just give us a bit of your sense of that, please.
Yeah, this is a good question. I think right now China, although there will be some of those truly innovative outcome, but if you look at China as a whole, the mainstream will still be a creative innovation. Take for example, in China, we have Weixin. What is Weixin? Weixin is a combination of WhatsApp, Facebook, and Twitter, right? So basically, what they did was they took the good parts of the three and then combined into one platform. We have G5 that I couldn't present to you.
My fault.
No, it's my fault. They have 7% global market share, and none of their handset is sold in China. It's all in emerging markets. Their handphone got 2 batteries compartment for India, because India, they travel long distance, maybe talk a lot on the phone, I don't know, but difficult to get it charged. So, they have 2 batteries. So I think the key thing is, and from a management consulting perspective or consultant's perspective, there's actually business opportunities for both Chinese and the Western market. Your challenge or your frustration comes from your desire to tell China what China should be, instead of accepting what China is at this moment, right? So if you're able to come to the acceptance of this is where China is today, I think it opens up a lot more doors than coming to China and insisting what China should be based on your own experience, because China is not there yet. Like say, from as far as I can see, the market as a whole, we have not reached the stage whereby we need to, break out of the box and do something truly, truly innovative. There's no need to. There'll be some of that kind of stuff, but those will be not mainstream. So, is it bad or good? Depending on which side of the fence you stand, right? But it's clearly the mainstream of what is going on in China right now.
Nick, let me bring you in on that in terms of, I suppose the concerns that some European companies might have if they were to do more of the R&D end in China, knowing the stage of development that China is at. So just give us your take in terms of how two sides can perhaps make a better use of their cooperation in terms of innovation.
Well, is this working? No? Yeah? Is it working? Yeah, okay, sorry, it doesn't sound very loud to me. I was expecting to hear some huge amount of noise coming from the back here. I think the main thing that we are seeing some of our big corporate clients moving their R&D centres to China, obviously. And you look at Unilever, you look at Philips, you look at Siemens, you look at many companies. And they're doing that for a number of reasons, partly to tap into the intellectual know-how which is there, the education and so on. But I think probably the most successful innovation which is happening amongst the multinationals in China is actually to pick up on slightly what Johnson was saying, which is adapting things to the local, to the market and to the market needs, which is after all what innovation is all about. It's about being able to find unfulfilled needs amongst consumers or companies. And I think that's probably where the more successful companies are going to be.
Vina, I want to bring you in on this. You are not, as far as I know, in China. Would you be worried about what would be some of the biggest enticements and challenges that you would view in terms of bringing your business to China?
At the moment, there would be huge challenges because the car is perceived as such a status symbol in China, and whereas in the UK, the US, and many more developed economies, the car is seen as something more of getting from point A to point B, even though a lot of us have this maybe philosophy that the car is my baby, or I would never let someone drive my car. We've done a lot of research into this area.
I think that's just American guys between the ages of 18 and 24.
It's a small amount. It's 7% according to our research, but it's a lot higher in China. That being said, there's some positive trends already now. Last year, there were something like 18.5 million new cars sold in China, but 4.5 million used cars, or secondhand cars sold. And the growth rate for the secondhand cars is actually a lot higher. It's about 12.5%, versus new car sales was only 2.5% increase year over year. So the Chinese consumer is already trying to extract more value out of their purchases. They're looking at things like the residual value of their car. Right now, there's no such thing as financing plans for used cars, only for new cars. So there's a huge potential for innovative companies to think about how to finance cars, finance used cars, essentially, our scheme is a way to finance your car. You can own a car from as little as £0 per month, because by renting it out 4 or 5 times a month, it pays for itself. And we have real people who are doing that. So yes, there's a challenge, but for a forward-thinking company, it's a huge opportunity.
Lini, I'm going to bring this back to Europe a little bit. I think one of the challenges for Europe to recover from this crisis is clearly to make the most of lots of different things. But is the European market sufficiently supportive of innovation? And are there things here that the Chinese market could learn from?
I think Johnson made a point that it's a necessity for the European market to innovate, because the market is not growing that fast.
Yeah.
Therefore, the companies competing with the same amount of piece of pie have to fight harder. But we also see the other the other kind of behavior, which is companies, just because the market's not growing, are actually more reluctant to invest. At least that's the case for my investors. They basically become much more risk averse and taking much less risk, and therefore investing less in the future, which provides excellent opportunity for us. But I think what European market has that Chinese market doesn't. So for example, why May.com is not, and for the moment anyway, not selling in China is because of the legal system. Whatever we sell in China, we know that in a week's time, everything will be copied at identical design. So one key differentiating factor.
And cheaper.
And much cheaper, probably, and cheaper over time. So it's a very virtuous circle that we don't really want to fight. One of the key differentiating factor for May.com from the rest of the players is really design. We're a design-led company, and design in products or innovation in products is something that if you don't have legal system, it's a very dangerous thing. So our design, once is voted and crowdsourced, voted and prototyped and being distributed in Europe, it is protected. And if the item becomes a bestseller, we enjoy the fruit of our innovation. But if we bring that to China, that's something that's very scary. So I'm just thinking, we are only one of the small company among so many millions of other people that probably have the same concern. So if we don't solve that problem in China, there will be probably a huge, reluctance for people to invest, at least in product and design. Maybe other areas of business like services and processes, things that are, less relevant to copy, may benefit better China. So maybe that's the reason why in China we have a lot of companies, huge in size, but excelled in services or adaptation of innovation in China, and not necessarily in product.
Actually, this is a great point to bring in Rong Dong. 你认为这个法律上的发展这个问
President Rong, the young man just now raised an interesting issue about legislation law. What do you think of that? Indeed, the game rule in China actually different, very much different from that in Europe. Yes, they want to reduce design cost, and then secondly, you also try to reduce the manufacturing cost. Thirdly, you have your own company. The principle is that they're going to reduce their cost in order to gain margin. So, so through the company, whether it's a European company enter into China market or Chinese company enter into European market, one thing's clear, has to be mutually beneficial, and serve the European people and serve the Chinese people. Tongfang, as a company, our market share is much bigger than those total of those companies in European and USA companies. We have to check whether it's equipment to detect whether you got any drugs on board. It's a very good equipment. And manufacturers, they also are capable. Manufacturing this kind of equipment are actually based in Germany and USA. They have they impose a income tax on our products. Therefore, our margins gone. So we actually appoint a lawyer who is based in Europe. Eventually, we found a very famous lawyer. He told us, yes, good. I am appointed by you. I will fight the case for you, but I can tell you, it's impossible for you to win. Actually, he told us. And honestly, of course, he would charge us the fees, of course. And because in Europe, they are now eating on the round table. What's redundant? Redundant, don't mind. The Chinese people going to have something redundant. But now you're sitting on my table and share my food. No, you can't do that. But don't forget the Chinese person attend your round table dinner with a dish. Maybe my dish is more delicious than that on your table, which are normally European dishes. So, got to. Eventually, it was resolved. We manufacture in Europe. We use the employees or European employees. There, that means I have brought my dish with you. Now we can share our dish. How about that? Now we got opportunity to actually it's Q&A, and anybody eager to introduce yourself, or you come from either a student or which company you're working for, and also you can ask which of our panelists you would like, like him actually to answer your question. Yeah. Now you can go ahead.
My name is Zhang Hai, and I'm working in the business development group in Hoffmann La Roche, which is the largest biopharmaceutical and diagnostic company. So what I'm doing is actually mainly related to the licensing and merger acquisitions. So my question to the panel is, given that most of the pharmaceutical companies, they actually have more products coming from external innovation. So they're actually using the merger acquisition, licensing, partnership, and venture capital method to access those innovation. How do the panel think about, let's say, Chinese corporate to access the innovation in Europe or in US? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me pick up a question, couple of questions. One here, and one in the row behind you. Yep. Yes, right there, please. And then we'll pick up the question from the gentleman in the back. Yeah, you'll be next, sir.
我想请问一下荣总。
My question is to Mr. Rong. Just now, my name is Rong Yunfeng. My company is engaging. It's a solution company. We want to enter into the China market. We realized we have a problem in China market with a good price. We have a good product that we cannot approach the most appropriate customers. So we would like to cooperate with Tsinghua Tongfang. Apart from rent, apart from providing us with rent, do you have any other supports? Oh, it's very important though, because the rent is very expensive in Beijing, as you might be aware.
Thank you very much. My name's Jurek Sikorsky. I'm executive in residence here in London Business School in entrepreneurship and healthcare. And I'm following on the question that was asked in healthcare. Many pharmaceutical companies are establishing innovation centers in China with the view of driving innovation and exploiting that innovation. I'd like to hear from the panel, in particular from Johnson, whether he sees innovation centers taking on a greater role in the future and indeed across other sectors.
Thank you very much. 荣总，先请你回答一下。
Could you please answer the question first? Yeah. Just now, I mentioned Tongfa. We're talking about the motivation plan was actually provided by Tsinghua. Just now, the young man raised a very good question. How to put this idea from zero and take action. If you target the Chinese market, you need to develop something and small actually required by the China government, by the Chinese market. Okay. You can approach Tongfang, us, yes. We're now doing some motorway and high-speed train. We're getting involved in those projects. Apart from those, we tax those the vehicle. If you got products like actually in this sector, then we can assess your products, what kind of contribution your product will actually in our supply chain. At our school, we can produce a lot of products.
Being established in China.
Yeah, sure. I think specifically on pharmaceutical, in China, essentially two streams. One would be to do, drugs for flu or common cold. There's no R&D needed. The business model is to make it as cheap as possible, expand your distribution channel, that's how they make money. But having said that, there are Chinese pharmaceutical companies with very strong R&D. Some of them, like a personal friend of mine, he has this product that is for diabetic patient. Apparently, he's one of the 3 companies in the world who can check your blood sugar on a real-time basis. And their latest product, according to him, is the only product in the world that meets the latest FDA requirement. But you do see a pattern behind that. They tend to be Chinese who spend many years in the States or maybe London, who educated and in that space. So, and for that kind of company, they will protect their R&D fiercely. So for you as an investor coming to China, I think again you need to pick which part of that field do you belong to, right? So if it's the common cold stuff, forget about R&D. It's just low cost versus something high end. Having said that, we do see some state-owned companies who has the check to write, beginning to focus on R&D. Pharmaceutical is one, chemical is the other. But consumer goods, a lot of R&D is more how to bring something global, localized. But we beginning to see some of this, but not in a big way like London or the US. But we see that trend now.
I'm actually going to try and gauge the sentiment on the panel here, because this is something which comes up a lot, and just in terms of the ability of China to really be innovative, to really create those innovative kinds of companies, in big sectors like pharmaceuticals, really kind of reaching the next level where you are an industry leader. So I just actually want a little show of hands from the panel. How many of you see China achieving that level of technological leadership, say within the next decade? Little show of hands, if you think it's possible.
Decade?
A decade?
Possibly a decade.
Decade? Yeah, decade. Okay. So I think this in part answers the pharmaceutical question, which is perhaps China is in there now, but I think the sentiment on the panel is that the capacity certainly is there. And there are, of course, ways to manage R&D in China. Lots of foreign companies divide the way that they set up their companies so that it can be wholly owned R&D centers and ways of protecting their proprietary information, but taking advantage of the Chinese capacity in other ways, distribution and production. To me, this is a very fast-changing area. Okay, we have time for just one final round of questions. I've got multiple hands, one there, one here, and one here in the middle, and then I'll give the panel a chance to answer, and that'll be it, I'm afraid. Okay, so if we can, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, all right, you won me over, 5, but they're gonna have to be quick questions. We're talking about lunch here, and as Rongdong pointed out, Chinese food is the best in the world. Chinese people love to eat lunch, so if you keep us from lunch, it's on you. So.
Yeah, I just want to quickly ask about crowdfunding, crowd banking in China. So, I know currently it's illegal in China, but for example, the Kickstarter.com, when it first set up in the US, now the US law quickly adapted to it and providing controls and support. in that particular industry. So what's your view in China, how this industry will evolve, the opportunities? Would the law be quickly adaptive to support and to open to this kind of industry?
Thank you. Pick up these two questions in the back there.
Hi, I'm Tian Nan from London Business School. I'll make my question really quick. If you look at the innovation in China, I think you'll see a lot of companies making micro innovation instead of disruptive innovation. And Mr. Chen, you just mentioned that right now in China, there's no need for companies to make such big effort in innovation. My question is, at what point do you think it's a time for Chinese companies to make such contribution in innovation so they can be a leader in their industry? Thanks.
Thank you. Question in the row behind you. Behind you. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Sophia. I came from Oxford University, and I also serve as a secretary for the China Student Scholar Association for the high-level entrepreneurship challenge. So for us, we do see a lot of ideas coming from the different sectors and of the country. And at this point, our question is, sometimes it comes from the lab, but sometimes it goes through more open innovation process. For example, like what Linda's company is doing. So our question is, which are the industry that's more appropriate to see ideas coming from within the lab, more traditional VC idea? Which are the industries or sectors that would be more appropriate for the open innovation? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. There's two questions here.
Good morning. My name is Shane Li. I'm a former consultant from Shanghai, and now work as a management trainee here in UK, in a horse company. So my question is for all the panelists. From your experience, what could be the most common mistakes that young generation of entrepreneurs make, and especially in China? Rong Zong just mentioned there are about 300 new startup companies in the Tsinghua Technology Park. So what piece of advice would you give to those young startup entrepreneurs to help them avoid those mistakes that the predecessors has made? Thank you.
Thank you. And final question in the row in front of you. Sorry, it's in the row in front. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Małgorzata Krusiewicz. I'm actually a researcher. I work on Chinese energy strategy. I was a visiting researcher for a while in Shanghai for Dr Linda Yueh, but I also visited Tsinghua University. And actually, maybe it's a follow-up kind of comment. How would you perceive, we talk about this innovation actually sector, how would you perceive the renewable energy sector in China? As we know, we have #1 in solar energy, Suntec Power, Chinese energy, based in Wuxi. We have Goldwind, which is #2 in the world in wind energy. So maybe this is a new Chinese energy high-tech sector. Well, I don't know. For me, it's maybe another way. Could you somehow comment on this? Thank you very much.
Renewable energy.
Sorry, the second question is, if I may, I don't see any problem on the business level, but how could you perceive, or would you give any recommendation for actual governments, the EU and China, maybe not only the UK, but EU-China level? Because of reasons mentioned by Mr. Lining, there are some, there is no big trust between two parties. How could you actually encourage business to work together, also on the higher level, like governmental level? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Actually, I'm going to first ask Rong Dong to answer the question about the biggest mistake and lesson. Then I'll go around to the rest of the panel, and if you could pick up any issues that you'd like. So Rong Dong first. 他是说最那个年轻人
Okay, my question is first to Mr. Yueh. Young people, what's their biggest worry really when they first start to innovate? This is how I see it. A person with a good thought, when they develop a new enterprise and when they want to make profit, there's two things. One is from Tsinghua University. The professor to actually basically, professors shouldn't start an enterprise because most of them fail. I'm actually one of the very lucky ones. Yeah. The main thing is, I think at the moment, well, in the past, I studied nuclear, chemistry. So there were no other no one else could do business in that area. So that's why actually I succeeded, because you actually have an idea, but in order to implement it is a completely different question. In China, lots of things. There are some excellent ideas, but they don't know how to put it into, practice, i.e. how to sort out your survival, how to sort out your finance. You probably could have, climbed, the Everest, but when you get, halfway, you died yourself. So survival is actually really important. So gradually, we've actually sorted out how to utilize various kind of resources to realize the dream of the inventor, to make it a success. So there's a number of questions, economic situation, change, political situation change. The ideas that originally could have succeeded, in the end it didn't. So to start with, you need to choose the right person to sort out different, stages. You really shouldn't actually, you shouldn't really do every stage yourself. You need to choose the right person to sort out different stage.
What's your biggest mistake?
I make a lot of mistakes, for sure. And actually, we work in an environment, a startup environment where mistakes are allowed and sometimes encouraged as long as you don't make twice. So that's a good thing. I think it's, so May.com is my second startup, and my first one, I made even more mistakes than the second one, even though we're still. But I think as a young entrepreneur, we are very much, because we have sometimes ideas, but we are not sure whether this is right or not. And we also, I see a lot of my friends actually as well, trying to follow the fashion. So we read TechCrunch, we see, Groupon, great, let's all do Groupon. So 10 of my friends will go to start a group buying company and so on.
You know what happened to Groupon stocks yesterday, right?
Yeah, and, not intentional to mention to that, but I just think it's from my experience, it pays more to focus on fundamental consumer needs rather than following the fashion of TechCrunch or fundraising. And as a young entrepreneur, we have limited channels of getting information, and a lot of information that we get actually from the press, from the news, and those are very biased point of view of the reality. And it pays much more to just go to the consumers, talk to them and ask, what is the pain? What's your pain? How can I do a little bit better to solve that? Not everything better, but just the incremental, the little point that actually makes you valuable to the rest of the business.
Thank you. We're now into lunchtime, but I want to give the rest of the panel just a chance in 30 seconds to answer anything that you heard of. Vinay.
Thank you. I would echo what Lee said as well. You really want to create something that...
Okay, Vinay, what was your biggest mistake? Li-Ning wouldn't tell us.
Likely, we make lots of mistakes as entrepreneurs. I think you misjudge certain things, and one thing that you shouldn't misjudge is how difficult it is to change consumer behavior and how long that takes. And it is definitely something that requires you to have a real passion for what you're doing. So unlike what we heard from one of the earlier panelists about how easy it might be to make money in China, if that's the case, great. I need to get on the first flight out there. But starting your own business is a long road, and you really have to have a passion on what you're doing. If you don't, then find something that you are really passionate about. Don't just try to make money. You want to change the world in a certain way, and that's the only thing that's going to keep you going.
Right. Johnson.
Just 3 sentences. I think for startups, especially focusing on consumers, just focus on areas that has potential to delight your customer. And that delightment will come from the potential to anger, right? So I think that's one. Second thing, people always ask me my view about China, and having been there for so long, is in China, everything is possible, but anything is possible, but everything is difficult. How to solve it? The third comment, and I have to say it in Mandarin because it means better. 资源共享，利益捆绑. That's the way to do business in China.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay.
Share the resources, but your benefits are actually bounded together.
Need to innovate. Why can't it just continue mimicking, which is what Mr. Wong was saying? Well, I think the main reason is probably twofold. One, as Chinese companies go more global, out of China, I mean, already Chinese companies are amongst the biggest in the world, but they're focused in China. But as they go global, they're going to have to compete with other global companies. And as we all know, particularly in sort of a lot of key sectors, the growth comes through innovation, and whether it's through process or business, through product or whatever. So innovation is going to become essential if Chinese companies want to become global, but also simply because of the slow rate of growth in Europe and the US at the moment. If the Chinese economy wants to keep growing at the rate it has been, at 8% or more, it's got to tap into your own consumer demands as well, and find new ways to innovate to tap into that.
I think that's actually a great note to end on. I mean, certainly for China to overcome the middle income country trap, where growth could slow considerably after per capita incomes hit about $14,000 on a PPP basis, it's going to have to innovate. And one of the indications is global multinational companies. 12 countries in the post-war period have joined the ranks of rich countries, and what they share in common are globally competitive companies, the likes of Sony, Samsung. And I think for China, this is the real push. It's about increasing prosperity for its own people, and doing that requires innovation and great companies. And I think we've heard from some great companies today, as well as a number of insights into how it is that innovation can be supported. And I'm very, very happy to hear that within a decade, the panel believes, they have confidence that China can make that leap. To me, that's the best thing I've heard all morning. So please join me in thanking a terrific panel.